Hello.
Ooh.
Hey.
I'm Belle. I use she, they pronouns.
I'm Xavier. I use they, them pronouns.
I'm AJ. I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Maeve. I use she, her pronouns, and we are VIP, very impactful people, broadcasting internationally from Turks and Caicos Islands. We are here to create our impactful, interesting message throughout your entire lives, across the smocks and tarmacs of your lives. We are going to have little dollops of impactfulness across, and we're going to be amazing in the tool of your lives and throughout all the smocks and Turks and Caicos Islands. We're going to have amazing mouthfeel and impactful interestingness across Tool and smocks and tarmacs. And that is what we will do.
Yes.
More specifically, we're going to be talking about Kiss Me Deadly, directed by Robert Aldrich. Aldrich? Aldrich.
It's interesting.
Not sure. It's interesting. Interesting name. Really interesting. Anyway,
Interesting
so that was
throughout the name.
Yeah, that was directed in that was from 1955. But we're going to be exploring the idea that this is considered one of the last true film noirs, as well as a bridge to neo-noir, and kind of exploring some of the self-reflexive aspects of this film that kind of go back to earlier things throughout the film noir genre.
Throughout entire history of film.
Yeah, throughout all the films. Yeah.
It's a really interesting trail, and we will dive in.
Mm-hmm.
And this interesting movie is about when a PI, Mike Hammer, picks up a strange woman on the side of the road who's escaped from a mental institution, and he's thrown into a vast and dangerous conspiracy revolving around a mysterious box and key that goes full Ark of the Covenant. After the woman is murdered and Mike narrowly escapes with his life from a group of mysterious men, he searches for answers with the help of his assistant and care repairman friend, but this only puts them all in grave danger. Ooh.
Ooh.
And throughout this film, we have many interesting characters. We have Mike Hammer, played by Ralph Meeker. We have Christina Bailey, the woman who escapes from the institution, played by Cloris Leachman.
That's one hell of a name.
Wow, wait.
Yeah.
We have
Cloris.
Lily Carver, aka Gabrielle, who is Christina's roommate, we think, played by Gabby Rogers. We have Velda Wickman, who's Mike's secretary and, shall we say, lover, played by Maxine Cooper. We have Dr. Sobrin, played by Albert Decker, and Lieutenant Pat Murphy, played by Wes Addy.
So as we know, throughout all of these films, noir films, there has been quite an intentional focus on communication through newspapers and through phones, and being concerned about communications and who's listening, who could be listening, are people going to try and contact you? And in this film, we definitely saw that in a way that I don't think we've quite seen before, with the answering machine in Mike's apartment. Because we haven't seen an answering machine before. We've seen, telephones and, things like that, letters, putting a little piece of paper in your doorbell. Yeah, recordings, like recording on the wax cylinders. But then out of nowhere, we get this answering machine, which I think was a really interesting connection back to this like cycle of communication. And this is a way that like you can literally hear someone leaving a message and you can hear what they're saying, and then you could pick up and start talking to them, or you could just pretend like you're not there and just listen into the conversation, which I thought that was really cool to include that in this film.
Definitely, like the speaking into the void, not knowing if someone's listening, and then all of a sudden the person you're trying to reach picks up and has like heard what's going on the whole time, is definitely like very, I don't want to say like jarring, but like definitely a different angle than we've seen before, but like still on the same theme of like communication and knowing what's going on when you're not really there.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
Hillary talks to him when he comes back. It's not like when Neff comes back and he has to check thing in the doorbell. Okay, this, he just presses the button and says, no new messages here. And it's a very realistic voice
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
too.
yeah.
I was quite surprised that it's not just a robot, but it's pretty realistic. And also just these old answering machines just look so, they're so interactive. It's like there's another person in the room with you because you can see the dial spinning and it's
It's alive.
It's alive.
And like
It's
the
extremely
focus on,
interesting.
like, the actual mechanism of it is
Mhm.
really interesting. Like you can see what's going on, and I feel like we've seen, like, especially like I'm thinking of like the big clock when they're like in the works
In the big clock.
in the
Oh. big
big clock. Yeah.
Yeah.
The big clock in the big clock.
Yes.
Clock in the
big
clock.
inside the big
Double
clock.
clocked up.
And I'm just thinking of like the focus on like the internal mechanism of these devices that like tell us some other piece of information.
Which is then an internal reflection on the mystery that is going on. Segue 2, this whole mystery thing that's going on that makes no sense. And
The
just how
mystery
this is
destined to kill them.
Yeah,
Like from the start.
just, it's obviously mystery is a huge part of noir and has been throughout all of noir. It's a really interesting connection there, but this is probably the most insane mystery because for the most part it'll begin with them finding the dead body. It usually doesn't begin with the mystery running out and almost hitting you in the middle of the road.
Wearing nothing but a trench coat either.
Or another but a trench coat, and then ends up with you getting kidnapped and driven off a cliff.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a way to start. It usually is more of a beautiful lady comes in and says, I have a jewel that's been stolen.
Yeah.
Or it's like a Walter Neff thing where he's like he's like leaving the message for keys and he's like, yeah, that's when I knew I was in trouble. I mean, he doesn't talk like that, but
or a random person showing up mysteriously out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But this was,
it was super
quite a
dramatic.
bang. Very
Yeah.
dramatic.
Super dramatic. And also he was in the dark about what was going on for like so severely for the entire film. And like at one point he says, like, to Velda, Mike says, after Nick is killed, he says, like, all I wanted, like, I don't care about the information you're giving me. She's giving him a really good tip of a name she heard. She's talking about the doctor, and he says, like, I really don't care. All I want to know is, like, who killed Nick. And so she comes back with, like, oh, that would be a really great way to justify your quest. And then I think she says, like, I don't remember what she calls it, but it's something like the what's it.
Doohickey.
Yeah, like the mysterious thing that we don't know what it is. And she's like, yeah, that would really justify your quest, but like, I know you just want to know what's going on.
Yeah. The women are so much more self-aware.
Oh yeah, I think
and
that's
they have him clocked. They know what he's about.
Yeah.
Like when Christina gets in the car with him and immediately starts like roasting him, sort of like she's essentially saying like, you're the type of guy who, and then like,
you're basically the stereotype.
Fucks with his car, like, doesn't really care about women that much. And there was that
says, like she says, you're the stereotypical noir detective PI. And it's kind of like this genre is going out on a limb of, we're gonna be self-referential, we're gonna acknowledge all the stereotypes, but we're gonna still do the stereotypes. and
we're just gonna have like other people call them out.
We're gonna have the most insane everything.
She even says when she's in the car, sort of like making fun of the way that he perceives women. She says, ugh, women, the incomplete sex.
Yeah. Which is like most of the men in these films like that we've seen like do have some level of like, oh, she couldn't possibly know what's going on like I do.
Mhm.
And I feel like to have that called out within like the first 10 minutes of the film is like setting it up for like, okay, we all know what's going on and we all know what goes on in noir. And we want you to know we're aware of it and we're making fun of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
It's like they're showing us that, you know, Mike knows that he doesn't know. They're like literally showing us like, okay, here's this thing that comes out of nowhere and she says some really cryptic shit. And now, as you can see, he knows that he doesn't know, but people think that he knows.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they're after
A
him
lot
for
of people
that.
think he knows a lot. And the whole time he's just like, come on, I just
Yeah.
picked up a lady one night.
Yeah.
It's like the Maltese Falcon, where they all think, oh, he's got the Falcon,
Mhm.
so let's offer him all this stuff. And he's sort of playing along with it, but so they don't know that he doesn't know this one. They don't know that
Yeah.
he doesn't know where it is, but they think he does. So he's sort of playing it along, but also he just wants to figure out what is with this lady. Why was she running away from a mental institution? Why did she have a key in her stomach?
Yeah.
Which is so bizarre.
Yeah, I kind of would want to know that too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Probably.
It took him a while to figure that out though too.
I know. It took a long time of him just like chasing leads for no reason that he could see clearly. And he just kind of like, I feel like Velda was really like, why are you like letting this continue? Like, this is not gonna yield anything good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally are not a part of this situation.
And he like he knows so little that like he doesn't even know that he's getting into like some top secret like government scheme, which is like making me think so much of like Pickup on South Street, where this guy just kind of like just falls in his lap this highly lucrative, just top secret information. He doesn't even know in this one. At least Mo is like, not Mo, at least the guy in Pickup from South Street is like,
Skip.
yeah, he's at least like aware that this is worth something. This guy is just like, I don't
know what it is, but
I don't know
it's
if this is at
better than
all.
what I've got going.
It's a thing that I know about, kind of, but not really, and that's
It's killed a friend of mine,
Yeah.
so it's killed a friend. It's gotten me kidnapped twice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and drugged too.
I think there's a really
Yeah.
the truth serum comes back. That's come in a few times in previous films.
Yeah,
They really like
Mhm.
injecting them with that truth serum.
I
But
like the look on the doctor's face when they're like, you get anything? And he's just like, he's just like, absolutely not. This guy is no help. And these drugs.
he's just
not
fucking
working.
mumbling, just saying things.
Just
Just laying there in X position on face down.
Yep.
That confused me a little because I looked down for about 30 seconds. I dropped my pencil and I came back up and then he was just kidnapped.
yeah.
It happened very quickly. Also, in terms of calling out their own tropes, the whole thing with the car and the bomb is usually they had the one they said, oh no, that's the one that they wanted us to find. I think that would be enough to do it, and that's probably what would be in typical noir is you just place the one bomb and that blows it up. But for this one, a bit of self-reflexivity. He did that one and then also this way more complicated one, which is kind of how the mystery goes, where you think it's just this one bomb, but no, it's actually this other bomb that's underneath and will only explode if you go above 88 miles an hour or something.
Yeah, Back to the Future moment.
Yeah.
Marty,
so much
go
more
that fast, you're gonna
complicated.
blow up the car.
this more complicated hidden underneath the thing, kind of like a metaphor for this whole conspiracy.
Yeah.
Where we thought that there was just a box with a jewel in it, but actually it's Armageddon.
Yeah. Or you think it's like a box, or like, you know, with Maltese Falcon, they think it's like this piece that's like worth so much, and then it turns out to be like nothing. And then they think like, and then in like, you know, Kiss Me Deadly, they think this box has riches in it, kind of in a similar manner. Which it's not, at one point I was almost thinking like maybe there's like nothing in this fucking box.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're way too invested, and for nobody to know what it is. And then for it to be like a literal bomb that like blows up in their face and just like destroys everything. It like goes out with a bang.
Oh yeah.
Honestly.
The sounds in the last like few minutes of the film were so intense.
Yeah.
Like that the rumbling, screaming, like craziness that was going on in the end. Yeah, it like kind of makes you think like, oh, all of this is for nothing. And then it's like, actually all of this was about death and controlling it, and like controlling the ultimate power. But nobody who was looking for it knew that that's what they were looking for.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
like that's kind of like a very noir thing. Like, you know, the PI detective knows that he doesn't know what he's going after almost. And that's what he's trying to find out, trying to find like some kind of truth or answer that ultimately doesn't exist, and it's actually just a bomb that will blow up.
Yeah, and like the whole long drawn out process of her opening the box, where she like is getting interrupted. At first that guy's like, do not open the box. You know, Pandora wanted to open the box,
I
and
should have named you Pandora.
yeah, like, okay. And then she's like, okay, I really don't care about this. Like, let's get you out of the way. And then Mike comes in, and there's that whole like, kiss me, kiss me. She is so annoying, by the way.
Yeah.
The way that she delivers her lines, like,
I think
really
it's the point, but still.
grinds my ears. I
Still.
know.
The
They
phlegm
did
fatale.
like
Annoying.
Yeah, it felt like with her, like she really thought she was going to be the femme fatale. Like that was her role that she was supposed to play. Like she was supposed to play real innocent or really seductive, and she like kind of fell flat on all accounts. And just like,
yeah, she got a bad mouth
really
feel.
miss the mark. Yeah, very bad mouth feel with that one. And so yeah, I feel like there was like definitely an absence of like the typical femme fatale.
It was just a dollop of femme fatale essence in there,
And
not a whole thing.
A lot more.
Not a smock.
We had like some variations on it, on the theme, but we didn't like have a full-blown effective femme fatale.
Yeah, ineffective.
Yeah, very ineffective.
And I think there's something that we should discuss: the shoes.
Yes.
/ lack thereof shoes.
So much lack.
So like all the men, especially the bad guys, you know, before you see their face, you see their shoes. And especially with the doctor, you don't see his face for a while. You always just see like the same pair of shoes, and you start associating like, oh, that's the big boss guy.
Yeah.
And then the women, not as often, or less often. Wow, that was like a really badly phrased sentence. The women are not really wearing shoes.
The women are not wearing shoes.
Yeah.
And they leave them barefoot for like a long time. Like we never see Christina get those clothes, obviously, because they never get where they're going really. But then we see, I guess, Gabrielle with like in the robe and barefoot for so long. And she's like, you know, they're both in like these states of like disarray that I feel like for decency's sake, we haven't seen that much in noir. But I feel like this film really lets go of like a lot of the things that society would like to be perceived about these films. It feels like they like loosen their grip on like making it look appropriate a little bit.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I know everything in this class seems to relate back to sex, honestly. So I'm wondering if there's some like weird fetishistic thing going on with also, yeah, the women also not wearing shoes. Also, like when Christina is being murdered and you just see her feet.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
You know, we had the whole thing with Pulp Fiction with opening the thing. Is this where Tarantino got his foot fetish? Because I mean, that's because that reference with opening the thing in the light is super obvious in Pulp Fiction to this. But yeah, the whole foot thing, how all the men always have their black shoes with a tiny bit of embroidery on them, a little white bit of thing. I don't know if it's embroidery. And then the women always are, I guess it's sort of a position of like they're one step closer to having sex because they have their shoes off.
Yeah.
And so one more step back from completely tightly wound, but to get your shoes off and you're a little bit closer
like
there.
A little more available. A little more available than the men.
You know, something else that was weird about this was I think this is the first time I'd ever seen a woman sweat on screen in these noirs.
Yeah.
In the dance scene. I'd never seen a woman in a film noir sweat before. That is also something which happens during sex, I think. And she was kind of doing a stripper pole thing at one point. And it reminded me a lot about our discussion of the boat, where that boat scene in that one movie, the titles blend together. I'm sorry.
I know.
The one with Skip?
The one with the girl who drove the boat. And there's the moment switch over.
Oh yeah. That was like 2 weeks ago. Not even.
Yes. And yeah, how that was a sort of that was basically the equivalent of a sex scene. And this also it's a woman in a leotard, sort of scantily got no shoes, and she's breathing heavily and she's sweating, and she's sort of teasing him with this information the whole time, and they're fighting a little bit, and you already know that these people are doing it all the time. So it really is like your last day of work, you just don't really care, so you're going to pull out everything and do all the stuff for the 1950s.
Yeah. I think another
show before.
Yeah, let's see how far we can go while still like being under the code.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it definitely evolved from the time of like Maltese Falcon up until this point, because there are things that happen in Kiss Me Deadly that you would never happen in Maltese Falcon.
I also think just like the level of like how convoluted the plot of this film is, like it's like looking at Maltese Falcon and then looking at this, it's like definitely like you can see these are the two bookends of the period. And this film is just so off the walls. Like
so Maltese Falcon is those mazes on the backs of cereal boxes. And this is
like a topographical
this is
it's like geocaching.
Yeah.
This is the labyrinth from Labyrinth. That's what this is compared to those cereal box mazes. And when you look back, it doesn't make a ton of sense what they were doing, but you don't care because she just opened Armageddon. And that's why this film works, is that okay, yeah, why did they have to kill all these people? What were they going to do with that box when they finished with it? It makes no sense, but holy crap, it's Pandora's box.
Yeah.
It's just so cool, and that's usually how noirs end. Is what was the point of all this? Like Double Indemnity, why did you go into that?
Yeah.
That was kind of stupid,
Like,
but
maybe you should have just stayed home.
it
Yeah.
ends with that great scene. That
Yeah.
great,
And I back to women. I think it's that this film like opens and closes with like a big event caused by a woman. Like it starts with obviously like Christina causing him to pull over and beginning this whole thing. And then it ends with like, I guess we're gonna call her Gabrielle. Like,
yeah.
you know, doing what everyone said not to do and like, you know, finishing this once and for all and her own life as well. And it sort of is like a, you know, like a self-contained bunch of actions and events that were all caused and ended by female characters, which I think is just pretty crazy. And like the men are just running around trying to like catch up a little bit.
Yeah. I think there's also a level of this film both shows you what's happening, but it also is like quite literally telling you, which is a little bit self-reflexive, maybe even like redundant. There's this one scene that I'm thinking of when Mike is like tied up to the bed, face down, and there's a radio playing in the background, and it's a fight that's going on. And there's this guy, McCoy, who's I guess winning the fight, and then this other guy, Fender, who's losing. And like while this is going on, Mike gets like one guy to come in, or one guy comes in, and then Mike ends up tying him up to the bed. And then he gets a second guy to come in, and the second guy kills the first guy, and then Mike kills the second guy. And then there's some screaming, and the third guy comes into the room. He just sees like his two friends that are dead, and on the radio, the fight, the dynamic of the fight has changed. And it says McCoy may be in trouble. Yes, sir. McCoy's eyes have a glazed look, and Fender is right on top of him. Now it's McCoy trying to run, and Fender's the man in pursuit. So there's like a literal, you can visually see that the dynamic has changed as Mike has escaped. And it's also literally telling you in like this fight, which is symbolic for what is happening, that the dynamic has changed.
Yeah. And who was pursuing is now being pursued.
Yeah, and you can even see on the last guy's face, like the shock of like his realization, similar to the realization of the boxer, that like, oh man, like I'm in some deep shit now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that like also just goes back to like information seeking from like communications technologies, and like how parallels are drawn between like this like technological life and like our life.
I think just as we've been mentioning this entire time about how the ending was Armageddon, but this is probably the part of the film that is not noir related at all, and yet somehow ends noir as a thing. And they, as we've seen in that picture, he was holding the noir book. This film is commonly thought to be the last true classic noir leading into neo noir, and it just ends in this way where like they knew they're blowing up this genre. They're killing the femme fatale. They killed the big boss. Those people might die. I don't know if she opened hell, maybe, but just the fact that they went so huge, because a lot of noir, when it ends, it's one of those wrap up. Everything has been wrapped up now.
Yeah, it's like
Mhm.
very contained. The
No
ending.
loose ends there.
Yeah.
Opposite here, complete opposite. It seemed like the loose ends were about to get tied up. And then the box opened and everything, no questions were answered. At the end of the noir, all the questions are always answered as to what is going on. And with this one, nothing. And it just feels like, well, noir is just leaving us with the eternal mystery.
And
Yeah.
it feels like kind of heavy because like not only do you not know any of the answers to your original questions, but there's no way to find out anymore. And you have actually more questions.
Yeah.
And kind of like, that's life. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Now you can't go back and undestroy the box and figure it out. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Sit with
There's
that.
like a really
Like-
deep sense of hopelessness that I think you also get in like some horror films that are forthcoming in the next decade. Like at the end of Night of the Living Dead, where you have this one guy that has survived the whole night, and like the cops have finally like gathered and they're going out and shooting all the zombies, and this one guy's left in the house and he's still alive and he has a gun, and then the cops see him and they assume he's a zombie too, and they shoot him and kill him, and that's like the end of it. They killed the like a living guy. Yeah, I think we survived like the whole night and like a bunch of like trauma and like bullshit, and you just have like more questions. You're like, did they not figure out like after the fact? Like, you know, you're just left like astounded and like kind of questioning everything that just happened. Like, I just watched all that for what?
Because it's like pointless, and then you're like, okay, we're getting to the point. All hope for realizing like why anything happened is completely destroyed, and you're just sitting there with like, guess I just gotta get up and move on now. There was no point, and maybe there isn't a point to anything. Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's the fact that like that event in horror films comes at like the end of the film. And in Kiss Me Deadly, this like big explosion of literal and like metaphorical, symbolic, I guess. It blows up right at the end, and you know that's not supposed to happen in noir. It's supposed to happen like at the beginning. You like see that, and then it's like everything that happened after that, or it happens somewhere in the middle. But this coming at the end is it's total shock. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
also with the ending too, like a lot of the endings, like when someone big in the movie dies, like they just kind of get shot and then fall over. This is like times a bajillion.
Yeah.
Literally disintegrates.
With like blood curdling screams.
Yeah, like it's
Like,
probably the most gruesome ending of anyone in noir.
yeah. And she also like knows what's happening, but like it's like she can't stop opening the box.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like she's starting to be literally like consumed by it, and she's still like
Yeah.
like pushing the lid open. like at that point, like there's just no way to go on. And like the box, like she's like compelled to like finish it.
You know what it might be? So
Mm.
that box is so we have this desire for all this noir. And you know, that was kind of the last one. And this was the last, and this box is opening neo-noir. And as much as we want to look away, we can't. And that's what that was. No one can ever argue at this point because I said it. And
maybe she's killing noir too.
Yeah,
she's opening the box and killing the genre.
And all of them as noir characters are going to die because this box is open, but it's just the way of the world and it's got to go on. We got to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time for neo-noir happens, and neo-noir usually ends like this one does, with no questions answered and everything is terrible. That's just how that works.
Satisfying.
Yeah. So it's a very it's a real progression where it does definitely start much more like a neo-noir. It then progresses as typical noir and then ends as what we've now come to believe is the neo-noir. I'm thinking a lot of Sin City is a big one. Anything Frank Miller, where there, guess the big one, the big difference that this film probably started is that the loose ends, there's a ton of them.
Yeah.
While in noir, they're all tied up at the end. And how life is a bunch of loose ends.
Yeah, I
It's
feel
a
like
big smock of loose ends.
I feel
The
like
smock has so
noir-
many threads.
Tarmac, full dollars.
Yeah.
I feel like noir was like kind of pushing the boundaries, and that, but like keeping everything like typically a little bit more towards what is satisfying for an audience and what is appropriate for the time period. But because they pushed the boundaries of that with like subtext and all of those things, like for so long, it just became like, okay, we're ready to actually see what we've been hinting at this whole time.
Yeah.
On with it.
Subtext becomes the text.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was this incredible tarmac of loose ends, just
Whole
peeling
tarmac.
off of the smock. And
Yeah. It covered the entire like area of Turks and Caicos.
Yes.
yeah, the entire area.
Whole
And it
land
was
area.
land area. But it noir has just been so impactful on us, and I think we were all very interested to learn, how did it
Mhm.
end?
Yes.
Yeah.
How did this amazing genre become throughout our lives and throughout all this stuff? And just why is Tool a word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the question we would like to leave you with. After all of our discussions this whole semester, the one burning question that we have is
Why is Tool a word?
Just get rid of it. We don't need it.
Yeah.
I don't need that one.
Uninvent. It's time
Yeah.
to go back.
Yeah.
We need to uninvent it. But
Yeah.
here's something we don't want to uninvent: our discussions,
Yes.
Yeah.
because they're amazing and impactful. And
And we
Mhm.
know we have impacted you so much.
Yeah.
Throughout the
So
entire
much.
semester.
So heavy. Yep. We hope you
And-
enjoy this final impact.
Final impact.
That was
we
a
have done.
working title for the name of this group was
Yeah.
Final Impact.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this is the final impact.
This is the final impact.
No more.
Broadcasting internationally from Turks and Caicos Islands. I know we went to great lengths to make sure it looked exactly the same,
Mhm.
but we did go.
Yeah, we replaced it all.
Yeah,
We
these
really
sets
did.
were really expensive, and I expect reimbursement.
Yeah.
very expensive, but I'm looking right now at the ocean.
Yeah, we're
Mhm.
we're in the Caribbean. Right
Yeah,
now.
we're in the
Yeah.
Caribbean.
I'm
It's
actually on a boat right now.
we're in Turks and Caicos Islands, and that's where we are. And
Yeah.
that's just where we will always be from now on.
Yeah.
And what we want to
Not
leave
coming
you
back.
with, nope.
I'm dropping out.
We just want to leave you with this impactful message. Why is Tool a word?
Yeah. And stay impactful
Yeah.
throughout the
impactful.
film and throughout your life.
Stay
Yeah.
interested in us and our impact. Thank
Stay
you.
interesting.
We are VIP.
Adios.